Have you ever had an experience of feeling at one with the universe, so deeply connected to life, the earth, that there's no separation between you and the universe and everything in the universe? Feeling so deeply connected with everything that your individuality seems to melt away. There's still some distinctness, but you're part of everything. Everything is connected. Everything is part of this great whole. A deep connection with the world, with the earth, with the creatures of the earth, with other people, with the cosmos. One of the experiences I had like that, I was at Antioch College, and we were on the environmental field program, which is a great program that goes out into the world and studies nature and our relationship to nature. And we're headed towards the Yakima Indian Reservation in the Pacific Northwest. And on the way there, we stopped in the Badlands of South Dakota. And I remember we were crowded into these two vans, and we parked because it was sunset. And so then we walked out onto the Badlands. I don't know if you've been there, but it's like a moonscape. There's these hills made of like mud or dirt, but they're beautiful, and they're so alien and strange. And the sun was setting, and it was a gorgeous sunset, like this yellowy orange sunset on one side, on the west. And then on the other side, I turned around and it was the moon rising, a full moon rising. And there's this pinkish orangish glow. And I just got the sense of just being on this planet, being on this sphere, flying through space. On one side, this other sphere, which is the sun giving life to the planet. On the other side, this beautiful moon. I just felt connected deeply with the heavens. I felt deeply connected with the universe. And I felt my particularity, my small place in this vast, awesome, awe-inspiring universe. I remember thinking at the time, I will never forget this moment, that this moment will be with me always. And I imagine you've had similar experiences of awe in nature, of wonder, of fascination, of a deep connection to something so much larger than yourself. These types of experiences call to mind William Blake and his poem, The Auguries of Innocence, and those 4 beautiful opening lines. To see a world in a grain of sand, and heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. I just love those lines. It captures that experience and that feeling of eternity when we're in awe, when we're connected to the universe in this way, when we're having these experiences. Time stops. We're in touch with the eternal. And that's why I can draw back to that experience now. It still feels alive in me. It still feels like part of me is still there, connected to everything on the spinning globe, hurling through space, orbiting the sun and the moon orbiting us, and all of us moving through this galaxy and all of us moving through the universe. It's awe-inspiring. And that's what today's episode is about, is connecting to and opening up and drawing from these experiences of interconnection with the universe. Today's episode, Interbeing, drawing on spiritual sustenance. Welcome to Resilience in Dark Times. I'm your companion and guide, Michael Glavin. If you're feeling overwhelmed by political upheaval and environmental crisis, you're in the right place. This podcast is for everyone who refuses to normalize injustice or ignore planetary emergencies. Together, we'll transform anxiety into action and build the emotional resilience we need to keep fighting. Let's begin. Welcome. I'm really excited about today's episode because I'm going to share with you some of my favorite passages, some of the thoughts and ideas and experiences that I draw inspiration from and sustenance. Now, the last 3 episodes, we've been talking about the small self, that ego self, the part of us that says I, that volitional space, that willing space, the part of us that decides when to go to the grocery store and what to buy and plans the meals. And we talked about how it's really important in these times when we're under threat to anchor ourselves in something beyond that ego. And so we looked at different ways of doing that. The first way was political action, to join with others to create a better world, a more just world, a more ecological world. So that was going out and connecting beyond ourselves with others. In the episode after that, we talked about connecting with our unconscious mind, the deeper self, the self that's revealed in dreams and energy and motivation and lack of motivation, the source of creativity. We talked about expanding the sense of me to include that, to include this embedded intelligence that is working through us, and that has an evolutionary history going back millions of years. And we talked about using that creativity to produce something, a work to share with the world. So that could be a philosophy or a painting or a dance or political theory. And last episode, we talked about love, connecting to someone else through love, a particular person. And we talked about how that expands the sense of me to include someone else, someone we love, someone whose needs are as important or more important than ours. That could be a lover, it could be a family member, it could be a child, it could be a parent, it could be a friend. That very personal connection. And we talked about how the action associated with love is loving presence, being with that person, tuning into them, listening to them, taking care of them. But also, since it's a relationship and that's two-directional, of telling them what we need, of allowing them to love us too. So it's not just us taking care of someone else, it's also allowing them to take care of us. And that back and forth, that's the loving connection. Today, we're going to look at expanding the sense of me, who I am, to include the whole universe, the whole world, and everything in the universe. Opening ourselves up to that interconnection, that interdependence, that interbeing. As things get worse in our society and in the world, ecologically and politically, one of the hopes that I have is that as things are threatened or taken away or fall apart, that it wakes us up to the interconnection, to how we all are dependent on each other and dependent on the planet, how the planet is dependent on us, that we're all important, that we're all interwoven in this amazing tapestry, in this web, and how precious it all is. So that's my hope in the suffering, the trauma, the violence, that it wakes us up so that we can see how precious everything is and address it in a proactive way so that we can be in service of each other, of the planet, of the animals, of the universe. This way of looking at the world is really beautifully summed up by Thich Nhat Hanh in his writing Clouds in Each Paper. So imagine that you're reading this in a book from a piece of paper, not on a digital device or listening to it. It says, if you are a poet, you will see clearly that there is a cloud floating in the sheet of paper. Without a cloud, there will be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. The cloud is essential for the paper to exist. If the cloud is not here, the sheet of paper cannot be here either. So we can say that the cloud and the paper are. Interbeing is a word that is not in the dictionary yet, but if we combine the prefix inter with the verb to be, we have a new verb, interbe, Without a cloud, we cannot have paper. So we can say that the cloud and the sheet of paper are. If we look into the sheet of paper even more deeply, we can see the sunshine in it. If the sunshine is not there, the forest cannot grow. In fact, nothing can grow. Even we cannot grow without sunshine. And so we know that the sunshine is also in this sheet of paper. The paper and the sunshine are. And if we continue to look, we can see the logger who cut the tree and brought it to the mill to be transformed into paper. And we see the wheat. We know the logger cannot exist without his daily bread, and therefore the wheat that became his bread is also in the sheet of paper. And the logger's father and mother are in it too. When we look in this way, we see that without all of these things, this sheet of paper cannot exist. I really love this way of looking at the world, and I appreciate the concept of interbeing, that we all not only are interconnected, but interdependent, that we cannot exist without everything else. My existence is dependent upon so many other things, and their existence is dependent on so many other things, and on and on and on, this vast web that connects everything, that we all are. Now, this is somewhat intellectual, but let's not be intellectual about it. I want you to turn to your own experience. Have you had experiences of this deep connection, of being in sync with other creatures or other people, seeing the interconnection and interdependence? Is this your experience? And I'm not talking about day-to-day experience, right? Day-to-day, we're in the ego realm. We're trying to get to work. We're caught in traffic. We have so many things we have to do that we feel isolated and disconnected. I'm talking about sort of the experiences we've had sort of off to the side when things are quiet, when we get to relax, if we ever get to relax, when we're struck by the beauty of nature and feel that sense of awe, or that sense of wonder, those moments. In those moments, do you feel this? Is this your experience? Do you feel this connection, this interconnection, this interdependence, that we're all connected in the web of life, that we each have one point and that all the points are connected to all the other points? I had an experience where I was able to go on a 3-day silent retreat. For some people, that's like a really hard challenge to not speak for 3 days. For me, it was awesome. I was like, I'm nailing this. Not talking is one of my strengths. I'm a therapist, so I'm a great listener. And we were out in nature, beautiful nature. And each evening there was a Dharma talk to talk about philosophy and living and different ways of being in the world. We're meditating multiple times a day. We're eating in silence, which relieved a lot of pressure to talk and all that social, like, what am I going to say? Do I remember this person's name? Like, all that was just gone. We could just be in the world. So really slowing down, just allowing us to be fully present. And, then the mind would go off, then come back. And we would go on nature walks just by ourselves. This was in California, and I was out walking in nature, and a robin showed up. And I think it was a robin. On the West Coast, they have different types of robins than the ones on the East Coast, but I think it was a robin. And that robin looked at me, and I looked at the robin, and I just had this really deep sense of that I am part of the universe. I'm manifested out of the universe. I'm made up of the universe. I am part of the universe. The universe is me. And also this robin is the universe. The robin is part of the universe, not separate from, arises within and from the universe. And so me looking at this other being, this other awareness looking back at me, I just got this profound sense of we are the universe looking at itself, recognizing itself, recognizing that it's alive and has awareness and some sort of form of consciousness, And I was appreciating its marvel and beauty of it being alive, that the universe is alive because that robin is part of the universe and that robin is alive, and I'm part of the universe and I am alive. And here we are connecting the universe with itself. It's so beautiful and so moving. And I want you to think about moments like that in your life, the moments of realization, of connection, that we're not alone. Those moments of attunement and mutual recognition and seeing the truth of the interconnection that we often forget in our daily lives. Those deep moments of awareness where the illusion of separateness falls away and that we're awakened to our deep connection with everything. I think this is really summed up well in the story of Indra's net. This is an Indian Buddhism story, and so it's story time. We're transitioning right into this, so put on a nice sweater and get a blanket and get yourself a cup of tea and just get all cozy. Sit down someplace if you can. Okay, here goes. One night, one of the followers of Buddha asked him, "Master, what is the ultimate foundation of life and the world?" Siddhartha raised his eyes to the sky and contemplated the stars. Then he smiled as if remembering. He said, "The ultimate foundation of life and the world is the net of Indra, god of the natural forces that protect and nourish life," lowering his eyes to look with affection at his disciple. Indra established the foundations of the world in heaven. To do this, he hung over his palace on Mount Meru a net of silk threads like a spider web, which extended to infinity in all directions. In each knot of the net, he put a precious gem, which reflects in its perfect facets all the other gems that cover the net. When you approach to look into any one of those gems, you discover that the gems reflected in it reflect in turn each and every one of the other gems of this immense silk fabric, and so on to infinity. "I do not understand, Master," said the disciple, frowning. "Where are all these gems you're talking about? I do not see them in this world." "You are one of the gems," Buddha replied. "And every person, every animal, every tree and plant, every insect, every speck of dust that floats up into a sunbeam and down onto a road is a gem in the net of Indra. Every emotion that you feel, all the feelings that all beings have ever felt, even thousands of years ago, and every idea that has crossed the mind of each being since the beginning of time is a gem of Indra's net. Within you is reflected everything that exists and everything that has ever existed in the universe, and you, yourself, are reflected in everything that exists. You are inside each human being, each animal, tree, and plant, each speck of dust, each idea or thought, each feeling to infinity. At every moment, the whole world is within you, and you are inside everything that exists. Although in your mind you see yourself as an independent being and you feel separated from the rest of the world, in truth, you are part of the common existence of everything that has ever been. You can never exist by virtue of yourself, by yourself alone, because you exist by virtue of the glorious existence of everything around you." A tear appeared in the eye of the disciple, and all the stars in the sky were reflected in it as if in a gem. And Buddha added, with a look that seemed to caress the soul of the disciple, "That is why I say to all of you to take care of the happiness of everything that surrounds you, of all beings, whether you believe that they live and feel or not, because they have their existence also in the depths of your heart." What a wonderful way to look at the universe, to look at everything. That everything is connected and that everything is reflected in everything else. And I don't know about you, but part of me is like, what about those people? What about those people who are doing these terrible things? that's part of it too. They are part of the web. They are part of the web too. What I love about this vision is that it shifts me towards a more compassionate place, a more compassionate, loving place. It doesn't make me passive. It doesn't make me inactive. I feel more motivated to protect the web of life, to protect this precious existence that we have that's everywhere, that's every little thing, needs our love and protection and encouragement. So it doesn't make me less active. It actually moves me towards action, but it changes the nature of that action. I come more from a place of compassion and love rather than a place of hate and anger. And there's definitely a place for anger, and we'll do an episode on that. But anger will burn you out, and it's not a happy place to be. You can take action in the world. You can do what you need to do. You can fight for social justice. But is fight really the right word here? Probably not. It's take action to try to encourage and to foster social justice, to stand up and say no when we need to, but to do that from a place of love and compassion and awareness of the interconnection and the interdependence of all things. This is just one way to see this interconnection, this interdependence. There are different paths just to come to the same place. This is a Buddhist way, but there are Christian ways, there are Jewish ways, there are Muslim ways. There are so many different ways to access this experience. There's secular ways, there's scientific ways. The important thing is experiencing that deep connection with all of life. Let's take a little bit of time to talk about exploring another pathway to this experience of deep inner connection. I have a secular view of Jesus. I'm not really interested in the miracles and the resurrection and all of that if taken literally. If taken metaphorically, I think that's really rich psychological territory and ethical territory. But literally, I'm not that interested in it. I think it's a reduction of the power of his teaching. I think that Jesus was more like Buddha than trying to help us lead a really good life. I think Jesus was interested in helping us enter what he called the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God. And the way into that, I don't think he wasn't talking about an afterlife. He wasn't talking about some reward later. I think he meant it in our experienced life. I think he meant it in the here and now. And the way to get into the kingdom of heaven is through love. And not the kind of love that we talked about last episode, love for your partner, love for your children, although that counts, but not just that. His power was loving beyond that, more of like what Schopenhauer was talking about, loving your neighbor, but also loving your enemy, loving the stranger, taking care of the stranger. His message was that if you act from this place of love, then you would be in the kingdom of heaven. You would experience it. And how is this love manifested? How do you know you're in this loving place? That is if you're serving other people, if you're serving the poor, if you're clothing the naked, if you're feeding the hungry, if you're tending to the sick. And why? Why tend to these strangers? Why tend to these immigrants, the cast outs, the lowest of the low? Because of this universal recognition that we're all children of God. That's his language, that we're all children of God, that we're all connected, and we all need to take care of each other. And we especially need to take care of those who need it the most, the sick, the poor, the immigrant. We need to welcome them in. We need to clothe them. We need to feed them. We need to tend to them. He was such a radical, such a revolutionary because he talked about loving the stranger, loving the enemy, loving the person who is different, not judging them, not putting them down, certainly not deporting them. He talked about welcoming them, loving them, taking care of them, serving them. And in that service, you see the connection, the interconnection, how that person is the same as you on a fundamental level. And if you've ever volunteered, if you've ever helped out at a soup kitchen or a clothing drive, or and you experience the people who are benefiting from that service and the look in their eye, you experience those people receiving that help, the feeling of connection you get from helping them, it's like you're helping yourself, right? That's when we talked about the expanded me. So setting aside of the ego, you realize that in that other person you're helping, you realize that that person and you are pretty much the same. They're not that different. They're different in so many ways, but what's important, what matters is they are in need and you are helping them just like you would like to be helped when you are in need. That it's, one hand washing the other, as it's talked about. So if one hand is washing the other, they're both connected to the same body, the same underlying union. And that's the experience of interconnection that we're talking about. And that is an ego transcendence. That is when you're freed from your worries, your particular individualistic worries and concerns become much more minimized, because what's important is that service and helping other human beings. So this is another way to experience that interconnection, is through love and through service. So whatever way you can access this, through love and service, through nature, through meditation, spiritual reflection, whatever you need to do, this is a profound resource. And I think you're tapping into some deeper truth, a deeper truth about our existence that lies beyond our ego, our individualistic needs and concerns and worries. And if you can do that and act from this place, that is powerful. That is strength, but not powerful in the way the ego wants to be powerful. It's powerful in the way of just the ego serving this greater and more important force in the world, in the universe. You're aligning yourself, you're aligning your ego with that force, and then it's flowing through you to other people, in service of other people, or in service of nature, in service of whatever it is. That's what the focus is on for this week. There's a story that Joanna Macy conveys. It's a Tibetan myth, and it's called the Shambhala Warriors. We're getting 2 stories today, so if you have your comfy blanket, just refill your tea and get ready. It was just in this time, when the future of all beings seemed to hang by the frailest of threads, that the kingdom of Shambhala emerges. Now, you can't go there because it's not a place. It exists in the hearts and minds of the Shambhala warriors. And actually, you can't tell a Shambhala warrior by looking at her or him, because there are no uniforms, no insignia, no banners to declare what side you are on. There are no barricades behind which you can rest and regroup, or stand to threaten the enemy. Not even any home turf, because always and everywhere, you just have the terrain of the barbarian powers to move across. Now the time has come when great courage is required of the Shambhala warriors, moral courage and physical courage, because they are going to go into the very center of the barbarian powers to dismantle their weapons. And their weapons in every sense of the word. They are going to go into the pits where the armaments are made and where they are deployed, also going into the corridors of power where the decisions are made to also dismantle mental weapons. The Shambhala warriors know that they can dismantle these weapons because the weapons are manomaya. That means mind-made. They are made by the human mind, so they can be unmade by the human mind. This is because these instruments of death are not coming from an extraterrestrial force or some unalterable predestined fate, but they arise from our choices, our habits, our relationships. These dangers arise from what are mind-made, so they can be unmade by the human mind. Now is the time when the Shambhala warriors go into training. They train in the use of 2 weapons. One is compassion, and the other is insight into the radical interdependence of all phenomena. And you need both. One is not enough. You need the compassion because that provides the fuel to move you out to where you need to go, to do what you need to do. And what it boils down to is to not be afraid of the suffering of the world. If you are not afraid of the pain, then nothing can stop you. You know this. But by itself, that is too hot to handle. It can burn you out. So you need the other. You need that insight into the radical interexistence of all things. With that, you know that this is not a battle between good guys and bad guys, because the line between good and evil runs through the landscape of every human heart. We are so interwoven in the web of existence that even the smallest act with clear intention has repercussions through the web that you can't begin to see, let alone measure. But that insight, while essential, is a little cool, a little abstract, so you need the heat of compassion. You need both of these tools, compassion and insight. This myth sets us up well to not reproduce the problems we're trying to fight against. Friedrich Nietzsche said, "Be careful when in fighting monsters, for you will become like them." That is the danger, to take on the tactics of our enemy, and in so doing, to start to become them. That is how oppression and authoritarianism is reproduced. We can see these cycles of how victims become perpetrators, and we want to avoid that. So this myth helps us with that. You need the compassion to go to those places to help the people to do what you can, to be motivated into action. And you need the insight of the interconnection of everything, how everything is reflected in everything else, so that when you take action, you act with compassion. And it's not about good guys and bad guys, that we all have these temptations and this struggle, this internal struggle. So it's about us trying to feed the compassion and the connection and the love and the reaching out. And when someone is acting out of anger and hate, to see that it's born of suffering, which doesn't mean that we don't try to stop it or prevent it or protect those who would be suffering from that violence. But when we do so with love and compassion in our hearts, not out of hate and vengeance. That just perpetuates the cycle of more hate and vengeance. But I find this to be a continual struggle, how to do what's right in the world, to protect the vulnerable, to protect the innocent, and not succumb to hate for the people who are imposing this violence against them. It is a struggle. I don't always wind up on the righteous side of things. And I think that's okay. That's why we have community. That's why we have others, to keep ourselves in this loving, compassionate, connected place. And that's why it's important to stay connected to this spiritual source, to get this spiritual sustenance, so we can be active in the world and be resourced, and to not lose our perspective, and to not sort of go to the dark side, as it were. Which leads us into the action item for today. And that is to get in touch again with that interconnection, that experience of interconnection. So your action item is to do some forest bathing. Now, it doesn't have to be a forest. It can be a meadow. It can be going to the ocean or a lake or a river. But the point is to connect with nature and connect with all your senses, or as many of them as you can. So leave the phone at home or leave it in your pocket. Maybe set a timer if you need to be back at a certain time. But give yourself at least a half an hour, at least 30 minutes to do this, to go and commune with nature. And so you use all your senses. Use your sense of sight. So you can bring a sketchbook if you want, and a pencil. And you don't have to be an artist. You don't have to be a good artist. I think everybody's an artist. But you don't have to draw something that's amazing. The practice for this would be, if you're going to sketch something, is to see all the detail. I notice when I draw and I want to draw a flower, like say it's a cone flower, and I suddenly start seeing more and more and more detail. I start saying, oh, there's this little bit of this petal. There's little tiny, tiny petals, right? Like 4 of them around that larger petal of the flower. And so even if you don't sketch, try to see as if you were an artist through an artist's eye. If I was going to draw the head of the dandelion that's gone to seed, how would I draw it? And you'll start seeing all the different little seed pods with the little wisps on top of them, little parachute guys ready to fly away. You'll see all of them, and then how do they connect, and what is the stem like, and if you want to get into the colors, all the different variations of color, the different shading. So that's just vision. Or you can close your eyes and just listen to the birds and to the waves, to even the traffic is less relaxing, but whatever is present in that moment, just let yourself observe it, take it in. Let yourself feel the ground, or if you're on sand, feel what the sand is like. And if you're on a beach or a lake or even a river, if you can do it safely, take your shoes off and feel your feet in the sand. Don't touch poison ivy or poison oak, but touch rocks and stones and petals or flowers. See what they feel like. What do things smell like? Can you smell the earth? Can you smell the sea? Can you smell the lake? Just let yourself take that in. Can you feel the wind on your face or the coolness or the warmth or the humidity? Just let yourself notice all of that, experience all of that. And your mind will wander and think about the to-do list, and then it'll come, just invite it back. That's okay. That's what the minds do. They tend to wander. They don't like to stay. That's okay. Just, Jack Kornfield talks about when the mind wanders, just invite it back onto the mat like a puppy. Like if you're trying to train a puppy to stay on the mat, it wanders off the mat. That's okay. Just gently take it and put it back on the mat. Just invite our minds back to focus on what is here right now, what is present right now. Just be present with what is present in an experiential, embodied way. And then notice how you feel. Notice that feeling of connection, a feeling of deep connection to the natural world. This is your world. This is you sprung from this world. It is you and you are it. You could not exist without this world, without this earth, without this magnificence. Just let yourself take that in and experience that. All right, that's it for today's session. Next session, we'll talk about, these last 3 or 4 episodes have been more philosophical, more theoretical. We're going to get a little bit more practical next week. We're going to talk about media hygiene and the extended mind. So the importance of regulating information flow and why that's difficult and what happens when you don't do that. We'll talk about how the mind doesn't exist only in your brain. It exists outside of your brain in the environment itself and how it draws from everything in its environment. So we can affect how we think and how we feel based on altering our environment. So that's going to be really exciting, really interesting. I'm excited about that episode and to share that with you. But until then, take care. Thanks for joining us on Resilience in Dark Times. Remember, building resilience isn't a solo project. It's something we do together. If this episode helped you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and visit resilienceInDarkTimes.com to join our community of people who refuse to give up. Until next time, stay strong, stay connected, and keep resisting.